Despite being a theater kid, particularly in middle school, high school, and studying it in college, I was never really all that into Shakespeare. When I was required to read Shakespeare out loud in, English class, it was never really my bag. Uh, that particular type of language is always a struggle for me. The themes of Shakespeare are timeless, right? Romeo and Juliet, Othello, Macbeth, which we're going to talk about today. Um, these are all really great pieces of art and piece performance art. But I've just never been able to get over dealing with that particular style of speech. And there's been some really interesting modern takes on Shakespeare's works. We had Romeo and Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann film, which really kept all of the language and then made everything very modern for the time. Instead of everyone having swords, they all had pistols, and all the duels were shootouts instead of sword fights. So that movie was like a massive hit when it came out in the 90s. You had 10 Things I Hate About You, which is just a high school retelling of The Taming of the Shrew. The titles even sound similar on purpose. Taming of the Shrew, 10 Things I Hate About You. Which was an Othello, essentially also reimagining this one set with modern language and modern speech patterns, taking place on a prep school campus in that was filmed in Charleston, South Carolina. Also another really good movie, Super Duper Dark, and a take on Othello. And so those have been kind of mixed bags, right? I don't think any of those movies have been particularly incredible. Romeo and Juliet in particular really butchered the ending of the original work, and so didn't work so much for me. So now let's talk about The Tragedy of Macbeth. This is from Joel Coen, one half of the Coen brothers. Personally, I'm a huge fan of his work, particularly The Big Lebowski, No Country for Old Men, Fargo, Raising Arizona. I think the Coen brothers really are royalty when it comes to filmmaking in my life. I think the movies they've done for the most part are fantastic. And so Joel Coen sets out on his own to direct a movie for the first time by himself, and it is this very cool, stylish, but very low key on purpose. And I'll talk about some of that when I get into the bulk of the review. Version of Macbeth, the story, the tragedy of Macbeth. And it's a period piece, so it takes place in the time in which it's set. And let's talk about this movie. Thanks so much for checking out the video. Before we get started, click on that red subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you know whenever I post a new piece of content. So, The Tragedy of Macbeth. This kind of came out of nowhere for me. Very excited to see Joel Coen breaking out on his own, apart from his brother, and directing a period Shakespeare piece about the story of Macbeth, starring Frances McDormand and Denzel Washington. A fantastic cast. The performances here are awesome. Really, Denzel he plays the perfect level of unhinged, and it really does it in a way that kind of surprised me. He's not kind of the first actor I would think of doing something like this, and he really does a great job with Shakespeare. The other one, Frances McDormand, right? She's been in a lot of the Coen brothers films. She's won an Oscar for her performance in Fargo. She's married to Joel Coen, so I'm not really surprised to see her appear in this film. She was fantastic and won an Oscar for three billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. Another incredible film if you haven't seen it. I should probably review that at some point. And she's awesome in this as the terrifying and creepy and super duper effed up Lady Macbeth. And they really just are the stars of the show. And it's a credit to not just them, but to the rest of the cast that, for the most part, the dialogue actually works here for me. I also went into this movie really paying attention. I turned on the captions so I could really kind of dig into the dialogue and view it in a way I hadn't viewed Shakespeare before. This is a movie that, and this is one of the detriments, and it's one of the things I didn't like as much. This is a movie where if your eyes are not glued to the screen, you're just gonna miss it. The dialogue is so it's Shakespeare, and it's so tough to follow if you're not actively paying attention that you have to that's the way you have to watch the movie. So you could say it's a negative and a positive. The dialogue works for me specifically because I paid a lot of attention to it and because I forced myself to, but it's also a testament to the performances that they make through body language and delivery of the lines. They make it much easier to understand what they're saying despite language essentially being a barrier. The style that this movie has is fantastic. It's set completely in black and white. There's not a single splash of color anywhere. And it's very, very low key. The sets are extremely muted and bland. Everything is just either black, white, or gray. That includes the ground that they walk on, the doors that they open, uh, every single light source. Like it's all just very, very simple and basic. It's almost as if the film is performed on a blank stage. That's really the best way I can describe it. It's so simplified and so stripped down and bare that it works. Don't know how it works, but it's a credit to everybody involved that it simply does. The focus on the dialogue is also, as I mentioned, the strength here, so I was excited to see that. The only real negative I have to drag the movie, apart from the dialogue still being a challenge for me, and I'm sure it will be for some people, the only other real thing is that the beginning of this movie is very abrupt. It just kind of dives right into the bulk of the story. This is a movie about revenge, jealousy, lust, rage, murder, death. It's life. It's about all of those things at once. Family, friendship. It's about everything. It's a movie about everything. And for a movie that's about everything, it really does just kind of dump you right into the midst of it in the beginning. And there's not a real lot of character development in the beginning of the film. You kind of Macbeth's and Lady Macbeth's reason for being like the terrible piece of crap humans they are never really fleshed out, because that's not something that the play or the original dialogue or this movie was ever really doesn't seem really interested in doing that. So these people are who they are, and you just have to kind of roll with it. So that's really the only criticism I have out of the movie. Otherwise, it's great. It's a movie that requires that you pay attention. It looks fantastic. Dialogue works. Performances across the board fantastic and super stylish. So if you like Shakespeare, check this movie out. If you don't like Shakespeare, maybe give it a shot. Pay lots of attention. Put your phone down. Put it away. Hide it in a drawer somewhere. Because this movie does require your full attention to be completely enjoyed. And thank you so much for checking out the review. If you liked it, found it helpful, consider subscribing. You can also like and share it. That tells the algorithms and the powers that be that it's worth promoting. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think of the Tragedy of Macbeth. And I will see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.